Is the customer always right? No, I don't think so. The customer is not always right. The thinking the customer is always right is a flawed thinking, a flawed philosophy. And we've had this for a long time. And growing up, I've always had the customer is always right. And there is something wrong with that statement. And we're going to be going into details in today's episode or in this video. So make sure you stick with us to the end to know what we're actually talking about. You might sit down and say, hey Ben, where are you taking us to? What are you trying to tell us? The customer is not always right. Who gave you the audacity to utter such words? Who are you to say the customer is not always right? Huh? I know. Just relax. Be patient with me and really understand where I'm going with this. You're going to be amazed by what we're about to talk about now. The first point is it creates unreasonable expectation. When you say the customer is always right, it creates a scenario where the customer have unreasonable demands and the expectation is crazy, and that is not good for the business sometimes because it empowers the customer to demand and sometimes be abusive. Let's use a practical example. You run an e-commerce an online store and you sell, let's just say clothing, and a customer places an order from your store and purchase a beautiful dress and use that dress for probably 5 months or so. And after the 5 months, the customer calls angry, very angry and mad, furious, telling you like, hey, I've been using this product for about 5 months now and I don't really understand what is going on. The cloth tall is not the way I expected it to be. Like things are just going bad. I need a new one for free. You need a new one for free. And if you think the customer is always right perspective and you take that philosophy, you might end up sending a new pair of clothes without even considering that it's against your policy. It's against your policy. Sometimes you forget about your policy to please the customer. And instead of you explaining that, we understand where you're coming from and we thank you for your feedback, but it is against our policy to give you a new cloth after 5 months of usage. Had it been, let's just assume your policy is 30 days, or if it was in 30 days time frame, then we will be able, to make such demand. Even at that, we're going to follow our policy. We cannot just say, we're just going to give you for free like that without some guideline, foundational principle, making sure that, what the complaint that the customer is bringing forward, it's legit and true. We have to have guardrails. The customer is not always right. But then, if the customer is not always right, then what is the customer doing? And what makes the customer powerful? Why can the customer run you out of business? Yeah, I know you're thinking about all these things as I'm talking, but we're going to get there. Relax. And the second thing is bad for your team, because if you keep, letting your employees tweak every rule just to please the customer, at the end of the day, it shows that you do not value your employees. You do not value them because you're going to make them adhere to every unreasonable demand that the customer is telling them, and you don't value them. Because if you value your employees, you're going to empower them. You're going to make sure they make smart decisions. That's how every good company should go. The customer is not always right. The customer is not always right. And it's not always, the next point is, it is not always profitable for the business. Sometimes trying to make sure you're pleasing the customer with the unreasonable demand might not be might not be profitable for the business in the long run. To you, you might think, oh, you're trying to stop some argument, you're trying to stop conflict, but you're setting up a bad example, because once you start like that, other customers are going to take advantage of what you just set forward. And mind you, if you don't satisfy the other customer the way you did with the previous one, then now you're putting yourself in a very bad situation, because the other customers are going to be like, wait a minute. So you're going to do this for this guy, for this other person, but you're not going to do the same thing for me? What kind of company are you? You're not even fair. So it's better not to start something you can't finish. A lot of times people fail to understand that, like, oh, the customer is always right, and you forget your own role as an advisor, as someone who got to understand the customer, but at the same time know that if the customer is making unreasonable demands, there are better ways to tackle it than just saying, because the customer is right, you're going to forget about your policy and neglect your business because you want to please the customer. There are better ways to do it. So, bang, if the customer is not always right, what are you saying? The customer is king. What do you mean by the customer is king? The customer is king, and here's why. The customer is king because the customer is king philosophy puts you as an advisor and puts the customer as the law. The customer is king because the customer is the law. What do you mean by the customer is the law? Because the customer has the ultimate power to the marketplace. Just like the king has the ultimate power to the kingdom. And the customer decides whether you stay in business or you run out or you go bankrupt. So the customer decides whatever happens in the marketplace. Ben Rollins, you just said that the customer is not always right. And now you're telling us that the customer is king and the customer is law. So the customer decides whether I stay in business or I go out of business. What are you actually saying? Because you got me confused, man. Hang on tight, now. Just stay with me. Let's keep going. You're going to understand where I'm going to. And the customer is equally, the second point is the customer is the source of value. What do I mean by the source of value? A king's power comes from the resources in their kingdom, and a customer's power comes from their money and their loyalty. So as a business person, you got to understand that, I need the customer's money and I need his loyalty. And you got to understand that you have to listen to the customer and understand where the customer is from, where the customer stands at the moment. And do not obey blindly. Do not obey blindly. That's not what we're saying here. But if you're saying the customer is law and the customer got the value, why is he not always right? Stay with me now. I'm coming for you. I'm going to answer that question. Your role is to serve the king. You got me confused. You got me confused. The customer is not always right. The customer is law. and the customer is value. Oh God, man, I don't know what you're talking about right now. And now you're telling me to serve the customer. But I want to serve the customer called. Man, you've been using this product for 5 months now and it's not working. After 5 months, me with the customer is always right attitude. I'm thinking, oh, yeah, I'm going to just send the new product to the customer without even understanding our policy and informing the customer on some intricate foundational principle of what we represent as a company, and don't think about how it will affect my employees with every unreasonable demand that the customer is making. And now you're telling me the customer is law, the customer got value. Man. And another point you just brought up is I should serve the customer. Was I not serving the customer by trying to meet up with their unreasonable demands? No, man. What do I mean by this? The job of a business owner is to serve the king's needs. Hey, Ben Rollins, where are you taking me to? Not to be a slave to their whip. Is to serve the king's need, not to be a slave to their whip. You are an advisor and a provider and a valued part of the kingdom. So you got to know your role, and you must listen to the king's complaints and understand their underlying needs. But you are obligated to grant. You're not obligated to grant every request. You are not obligated to grant every request, especially if it harms your kingdom or business. In a nutshell, what am I saying here? As a business owner, you got to understand that, hey, I have a role to play. I'm the provider here. I'm a resource to the king. The king needs me. I'm a valued part of the kingdom. I understand the king is law. I understand the king got value. The value of a king comes from the asset in his kingdom, or the possession, or the land, or everything within his kingdom. That's where the value of the king comes from. And the value of the customer comes from their money and their loyalty. So you as a business owner, you have to understand that, I have a role to play in the kingdom. I have an important role to play in the kingdom. So when a customer comes with unreasonable demand, for example, let's go back to the talk we had earlier on about a customer coming after 5 months of using the product and giving you some crazy complaints, unreasonable demands. They want a new product because they believe that they deserve a new product after using that particular product for 5 months. And you know it's an inch policy. It's not what you as a company should be going for. If you were looking at it from a customized king perspective, you're going to listen to the king complaints carefully. Hello, king, with empathy. And you're trying to understand where the king is coming from. Make sure you respect the king, value the king. And when you understand where the king is coming from, at the end of, after the king is done giving you the message, you tell the king, the customer, I understand where you're coming from, and I want to thank you for being a valued customer, for using our product for this length of time. It's an honor for us to have you, and I value your feedback. We're going to make sure that your customer experience the next time you use a product is going to be top notch. But unfortunately, right now, it's against our policy to give you a new product or give you a refund after 5 months of using our product. However, since you're a valued customer, we're going to give you a discount on your new purchase. So if you buy that product, we're going to give you a 5% discount because we value you as our customer. You see how we put it there? You see the difference? You're not falling to the unreasonable demand, but you're respecting the customer, understanding their needs, and as an advisor to that kingdom, and as an important personality to the kingdom, you know that, oh, yeah, I understand the king. The king can make me go out of business, or the king can make me stay in business. But how do I respect the king? How do I serve the king? How do I make sure the king understands that I'm a valued part of this kingdom? It's all about listening with the intention to understand. Because when you understand the customer, it puts you in a different angle. And you get the customer's loyalty by simply listening and understanding. Because a lot of times people listen with the intention to react or respond. And when you're listening with the intention to react or respond, you don't really understand where the customer is coming from, and you miss the message. And when you miss the message, you're just like, what can I do, or what can I say to stop the customer from, taking this conversation to another level, or making me run out of business, or making sure that people are not going to buy my product. Listening is a very important skill that you have to impact to your employees. It's very, 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 very important. Sometimes we take that for granted. Listening. Everybody gotta listen. So understand the customer is not always right. But that does not mean that you're not going to serve the customer, you're not going to understand that the customer is valuable, and you're not going to know that the customer is low. If you miss these things and you don't understand the different philosophies and how it might impact your business, sometimes you do some certain things because you think it's popular. Because it's popular does not make it right. And you got to find things that are principle and see how you can, apply it to your business. Your goal is to be a wise ruler who understands the power of the customer or the king, and while maintaining your business and making it sustainable. It's very, very important. Focus on your relationship, not the transaction. Focus on your relationship with the customer, not the transaction. Because a lot of time, businesses focus on the transaction. The transaction is temporary. It's not permanent. But when you build a successful relationship with the customer, oh boy, it's a long time game. Because when you build a successful relationship with the customer understands that you value them. Now, you're not seeing them as a tool that you can just control anyhow. You don't just see them as someone who's a one-time transaction person, or anytime you have a product, they're gonna buy and that's it. But you value them. You welcome them to your community, but at the same time, the guidelines, the rules that everybody got to follow to make sure that the kingdom is sustainable. Because if you don't have a sustainable kingdom, you're not a good king. Oh, I love this one. Your team is your army. Oh, Lord. Your team is your army. And you got to, empower them. Make sure they make informed decisions and give them the authority to say no to unreasonable demands. This is a very important point. Your team is your army, and you have to empower them and give them the authority to say no to any unreasonable demand. And you see, when you empower your army, they are better equipped to handle every challenge that's going to arise at any point in time. And they're equipped for that unprecedented challenge. But if you don't equip them and you give them the authority to say no to any unreasonable demands, they're going to be trying to tweak everything just to please the customer. At the long term, you're not valuing them, because sometimes it's mentally draining to be going against company policies all the time just because we want to please some unreasonable demands of a customer who does not really value our product or value us as a company. And sometimes those particular set of individuals run you out of business. And when you listen to the customer, you know who your true customers are. You know who your fan. You know who's a fan. You know who are dedicated to your company, to your product, to your business. And you don't just give in to any unreasonable demand. It's very important to listen, and you got to train your employees to be able to listen, because that's a skill set that everybody should have. And once you're able to understand where the customer is coming from, you empathize with them. Like, hey, I understand your point of view. Thank you for using our product. You're a valued part of this business. We appreciate you. However, there's some guiding principles. However, there's some policies that we got to follow in place. I know you're the king. I know I have to serve you. You are law. You are a value. But I'm an advisor to the kingdom, and I have a role to play in this kingdom. And I have to make sure that the kingdom does not go down. Yep, when you know your role, you know how to effectively make sure that your business is in a better position. The customer's loyalty is your reward. The customer's loyalty is your reward. What do I mean by that? By treating your customers like a king, with respect, like I said earlier, dignity, and focus on their needs, you earn their loyalty. And that is worth far more than any single transaction. When you respect the customer, you treat them like a valued personality without compromising your policies. But you can, give them discounts, reasonable discounts that, make sense to you and the customer. But when you're making those compromises, you got to understand your policies and make sure that you're not going against your policies. It's very important. Meet the customer somewhere, but don't say, oh, you're going to give a customer product for free because the customer is always right. No, that's not how it should be. You're after the loyalty of the customer, and you're after respect. You're serving them with integrity, with respect, understanding their value, where they come from, and trying to serve them better as kings, because they're kings, and they determine whether you go out of business or you stay in business. This is a tricky one. It's a tricky one, and I hope that you gain value from this video, this episode, and do us a favor, like the video and subscribe to our channel so you can be the first person to be notified when we drop any future episode, because our goal is to build entrepreneurs, leaders, business leaders who are going to impact the future and the present. The goal is to build you so you can watch our videos and really understand what business is all about, and what are some of the actions you can take, practical actions, practical steps that can better your business, grow your business tenfold. Sometimes we focus on the wrong things. Sometimes we focus on the right things, but you have to have balance to understand that, hey, I have to understand the customer better, and I have to serve the customer better. I have to make sure that despite the fact that the customer is not always right, but there's some things that I gotta pay attention to. By listening to the customer's demand, by understanding that the customer is the king, is law, got the value, can make you stay in business or make you go out of business. Understanding these principles put you in a better position. Just knowing that the customer is king and how a kingdom rule. I understand in America, people really don't understand how kingdoms operate. The folks in Africa have a better understanding, because we have a lot of kingdoms around. Not the typical kingdom where people think of like maybe the United Kingdom, but now it's not really. Despite the UK having a king, they have a king, but the king have limited authority, like it should be. Normally in the kingdom, whatever the king says is law, but now with democracy, everything is kind of like centered around the people and what the people need, the people says and stuff like that. So kind of limit the powers of the king, because I think in Britain, the reason why it happened in the United Kingdom is because the king abuse his power. So the people were fed up, like, no, they can't keep going through this cycle of people. Kings keep coming and just doing things without really understanding that the people at the end of the day got value and need to be respected as well. So I know it might be a complicated one, but hey, I hope you gain something from this and share with your loved ones, family, and friends if you think this boy made some sense today or you learned something. But if you did not, I hope that in the next episode or the next video, we can get you to the point where you're gonna like our video and maybe share it with someone. At this point, if you do not gain value and you don't think the video is worth sharing, it's fine. I hope my goal is to get you to the point where you can share it, you can like it, and you can subscribe to our channel. So thank you for sharing your time with me. I really appreciate you. If you listen to this point, I appreciate you so much. Your time, it's valuable to me. It means a lot to me, and I really appreciate, and it gives me encouragement. It's really encouraging to go do some research and study for the next episode. So thank you. See you in the next episode. Bye bye.